Let's go ahead.
Spirituality is a concept that some people have difficulty wrapping their heads around. And the spiritual experience often occurs in a trance-like state and involves an experience of something that is greater than the individual, that is usually positive and gives sometimes a sense of unity or a sense of the world being all one. And it is something that can be experienced intentionally if one is lucky by shifting into trance. And so there are various ways that we do that. The old way was through shamanic methods, and that's still used in the world. But with shamanic methods, rattling or drumming often will auditorily drive the person into trance. And the person has to have the expectation that perhaps something will happen on an elevated level. And so chance favors the prepared mind, and that's done on an intellectual level, it's done on an emotional level, it's done on a spiritual level. And on the spiritual level, if one is fortunate, one may have that kind of elevating experience, seeing things from a higher perch in the world and appreciating things, seeing things that they hadn't seen before. And that can be transformational because there's sort of a deconstruction of the old and a reconstruction of the new in terms of how the person views the world. More recently, hypnosis has been used in the Western part of the world for trance induction, and hypnosis can be used for spiritual purposes, similar to the archaic method. In the Eastern part of the world, more typically meditation has been used. The meditation can either be concentrative or it can be mindfulness meditation. And that also has allowed people to experience events that they interpret as spiritual. There is a cultural background to each of these, and so the kind of interpretation that occurs is based on the culture the person is in. And experiences that people have had in the past that are either personal experiences or experiences that created a mythology are the basis of most of our religions. And so there's a tracing back to events that occurred in the past in many religions, and unfortunately with religions, many of them become bureaucratized, so that what was once a spiritual energy experience becomes more of a concrete kind of process where there are lots of rules and lots of sort of thoughts that are consigned to particular patterns based on the prior experience. So that religion, it's been said, is the politics of spirituality.
How does that relate to your work in treatment?
Well, how that relates to my work is that most of the time people can be helped on a mental level with things like cognitive behavioral therapy, or on an emotional level, sometimes with hypnosis. But occasionally one will have a roadblock that doesn't seem to budge on those levels. And if that happens, sometimes exploring the spiritual level will help locate a roadblock that can be cleared, and the person can then have a transformational change at that level that allows them to experience an improvement in whatever problem they were having.
And you utilize hypnosis to help the person achieve that kind of a spiritual, get in touch with a spiritual aspect of...
That's an option, yes. If you go through the Cheek and Lacrone common problem areas for why a person is stuck, there is not a spiritual element to that. And so adding some spiritual elements to see if there is stuckness that one can assist with is part of what I can do.
And would you tell me the title of your workshop here at the Society for Clinical Experimental Hypnosis, yes, and also say your name, please?
Phillip Shenefelt, and it was a long title, reframing via the hypnosis or altered states of consciousness for spiritual and religious aspects of skin and skin disorders. I'm a dermatologist, and skin is a great palette or projection screen for the body. And so many skin issues have an emotional or a mental or even a spiritual overlay in addition to the physical.
Is there a case or an example you could tell me about?
There are several that are reported in the literature. For example, there was a man who had severe atopic dermatitis who was from England. He'd undergone multiple therapies over the course of 7 or 8 years with no relief. He went to South America and worked with a shaman and with ayahuasca, and was there for several months, and then suddenly had a breakthrough, and his atopic dermatitis cleared, and it stayed cleared for years afterwards, and he wrote a book about it. Another example is psoriasis, where a person who had psoriasis was aware that someone was praying for that person. The person who was doing the praying was miles away, and that person's psoriasis, which he had had for a number of months, cleared and stayed cleared.
Oh, goodness.
So those are just a couple of examples of kinds of things that can occur, presumably on a spiritual level, where there was some sort of blockage to the healing process on other levels.
Anything you'd like to add?
I think that pretty well covers it.
Thank you.
Sure.